Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Anglo Election Insights. We're today taking a trip across the Tasman Sea to New Zealand, whose next federal election is coming out in about a year and a half's time, and it looks like it's going to be a really close one. So I just want to provide some basic groundwork so that I can come back to this one in about 6 to 12 months' time and start to preview it properly. But yeah, it looks really interesting at this stage, with the Nationals-led coalition government looking to secure a second term. But it doesn't seem like Labor's gone anywhere, and their coalition partners seem to be getting stronger. So let's dive right into it, shall we? So this is the current composition of the New Zealand Parliament. There are 123 seats because of overhangs, which I'll explain shortly. But we have the Right Bloc, who have formed government. They are led by the Nationals on 49 seats, and they've partnered up with Dave Seymour's ACT Party and Winston Peters' New Zealand First Party, who between them hold the extra 19 seats. And then on the left, we have the opposition led by Labor on 34 seats after a big drop from 2020, and then the Greens and the Maori Party. I'm just going to refer to them as the Maori Party. I'm not going to try and butcher Maori pronunciations. We're just gonna go with my Aussie drawl. So it does appear that these two sort of coalitions have firmed up. The New Zealand First, in particular, under Winston Peters, has a history of backing both Labor and national governments, but since 2017, when he backed Jacinda Ardern, you get the sense that he maybe won't back Labor again, although he is known to be a bit of a mercurial sort of guy who just picks up on the political winds and follows them to his advantage. So we could see something along those lines, although with the way kind of Maori race relations are heading and the positions he's taken up over the last little while, I don't sort of see that happening, and I would say he would remain tied to the national coalition for the foreseeable future. So just to try and briefly explain overhangs for those not familiar, they exist when there's a conflict between how many seats a party is entitled to proportionally across the country and how many constituencies with single members that they've actually won. And in New Zealand, you have this added complexity of there being 7 additional Maori-only seats. So what happened is in 2023, the Maori Party, they won like 3.1% of the vote, which entitled them to, I think, 4 list seats, so 4 party seats. But they also won 6 of the 7 Maori electorates. So what that meant was they were obviously awarded the 6 seats, but because they'd only won because they had won like 4 seats worth in the proportional system, that basically freed up those seats for other parties. I'm probably not explaining this that well, but effectively, if a party wins more individual constituencies than seats that it would be entitled to proportionally, then it adds extra seats to Parliament. So the Maori Party won 6 but were entitled to 4, so that created like 2 extra seats in Parliament. And there was also another one created because there was a death of a candidate in the election period in Port Waitako. I don't know if that's how you say it. So an extra list MP was elected as a result of that election being deferred, and then the Nationals went on to win that by-election. So the current Parliament has 123 seats, which, if we go back, that's why they've needed a 62-seat majority, which is why between National and ACT they didn't quite have enough to form government, which early on election night it was looking like they might have enough seats between them to not need New Zealand First, but that didn't end up being the case. Another little bit of spice for the recipe here is that for I think the 3rd time there's the potential for a referendum on 4-year terms for the federal New Zealand government. The other two back in, I think, 67 and 1990 were defeated pretty easily. But there is like cross-party support within Parliament, and I think the enabling legislation has actually been passed, at least the first reading. It'll probably go through, so there's a decent chance there'll be another referendum question about 4-year terms. Currently they're on 3-year terms. So a very, very basic overview of the parties here. There are 6 parties represented within New Zealand Parliament at the moment. As some of you will know, there is a 5% threshold that parties must meet in order to start winning list seats effectively, but you can circumnavigate that by winning an individual constituency. So for example, the Maori Party, who only won like 3.1% of the vote, they won constituencies like the Maori only single member constituencies. So if they had only won, say, one of those, I think their proportional vote would still count. But as we explained earlier, they had that overhang thing, so it didn't matter. Anyway, so the National Party is New Zealand's like centre-right party, basically. The Labour Party, centre-left. The Greens Party, basically like the progressive left, as most of you will be familiar with. ACT New Zealand, they are a sort of classical liberal, sort of libertarian light style party who've been around for quite a while. New Zealand First under Winston Peters, I'm calling them populist right. They haven't always necessarily been right wing, but their views on sort of immigration and race relations have kind of shunted them into that corner for the moment. And then the Maori Party, also like a progressive left party, but with a particular focus on race relations with the Maori people, of course. So then, as far as the issues go, cost of living, big one. New Zealand just got absolutely smashed by the kind of inflationary 2022 to 2024 period, and their interest rates went up to 5.5%, but they've since dropped quite a bit. However, there are still major cost of living issues. There's a lot of economic headwinds. Unemployment is still growing, and it's at 5%, whereas I think in Australia we're still down at like 4.1. And I was reading that a lot of young people are just leaving the country and not coming back. So it's kind of like Tasmania, I guess, bit of a brain drain. They have a similar sort of housing issue in different parts of the country as we do, with really unaffordable housing, which is probably contributing to that. Budgetary pressures, very common in governments around the world these days. Because of the influence of ACT New Zealand, there's a lot more talk about stuff like privatisation of various aspects of healthcare, which is causing a lot of opposition. And then Maori relations have basically hit a new low. There was a failed attempt to reinterpret the Treaty of Waitangi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, which is New Zealand's founding treaty, I guess. We don't really have an equivalent in Australia, but it was sort of I guess the peace deal between the colonizers and the native Maori people of New Zealand, and that is still kind of having legal and political consequences today in terms of how the country is run. Now, I definitely don't know the ins and outs of it, so don't quote me on any of that. If you guys have some more light to shed on that in the comments, please go ahead. But ACT New Zealand were looking to reinterpret that treaty, and it caused a lot of opposition within the Maori community, of course. Maori MPs performed the haka and ripped up the pages of the legislation in Parliament, and there were big marches in the major cities, that sort of thing. There's definitely this kind of racially divisive flavour to the current Parliament, I would say. if we have a quick look at some polling, I just jumped on Wikipedia and found these graphs. So initially, National, their coalition had a pretty big lead. You can see it's come in quite a bit, and it looks like it's headed kind of back out, but not really. You can see, looking at most of the polling, the pollsters are sort of assuming that the same three-party coalitions will exist as right and left blocs, and most polls at this stage have the National Coalition leading by 2 or 3 seats, but the odd one comes up with Labor in the lead, and you can see these red dots here. There was a string of polls in quick succession which had Labor effectively able to form government, but it's since moved away. New Zealand has just passed their 2025 budget, and the Deputy Prime Ministership has moved from Winston Peters to Dave Seymour of ACT. So whether or not that has much of an impact on polling going forward, we'll see, but it just looks really tight at the moment. It has looked tight for quite a while. And then as far as preferred Prime Minister, it's a similar story. Generally, Christopher Luxon, or Luxon, I don't know how to say it, Luxon, he has a lead, a small lead of somewhere between like 1 and 5% over Hipkins of Labor, but every now and then Hipkins actually leads in one of these polls as well. Dave Seymour, pretty divisive figure. The Greens sort of not really doing much, and then Winston Peters, again, like really sort of mercurial character who he's been around the block for a long time. And that's really it. There's not a whole bunch more to say at this point. Just wanted to lay some groundwork today and make a few comments on how things are going, but we'll dial back in as 2026 comes around, and I do intend to cover that election in at least some sort of detail for you guys. So thanks for watching. If you've watched through to the end, thank you very much. Please leave your comments, especially if you live in New Zealand, or maybe you used to live there, or you follow the politics pretty closely. Would definitely appreciate some insights from you guys. So thanks again. Comment below if you've got thoughts. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe to the channel if you're new and you're enjoying the content and you'd like to see more. Thanks everybody. Have a lovely day.